Freedom. The philosophy of right is founded on an ethical theory which identifies the human good with the self-actualization of the human spirit. Hegel's name for the essence of the spirit is freedom. But Hegel does not mean by freedom what most people mean by it. Most people, according to Hegel, think that freedom consists in possibilities of acting, but freedom is really a kind of action, namely one in which I am determined entirely through myself, and not at all by anything external. Even in the case of free action, Hegel thinks that most people identify it with arbitrariness, Willkür, with doing whatever we please, or with venting our particularity and idiosyncrasy. Hegel regards this view as shallow and immature. He insists that we are free only when we overcome particularity and act universally or objectively, according to the concept of the will. Free action is action to which we deal with nothing that is external to our own objective nature. That does not mean that freedom consists in withdrawing from what is other than ourselves. On the contrary, Hegel insists that absence of dependence on an other is one not outside the other, but in it. It attains actuality not by fleeing the other, but by overcoming it. Thus, Hegel describes freedom as being with oneself in another, that is, actively relating to something other than oneself in such a way that this other becomes integrated with one's projects, completing and fulfilling them so that it counts as belonging to one man's own action rather than standing over against it. This means that freedom is possible only to the extent that we act rationally, and in circumstances where the objects of our action are in harmony with our reason. The most spiritual of these objects is the social order in which we live, just as Hegel's treatment of individual human psychology falls under the heading of subjective spirit, so his treatment of the rational society in the philosophy of right constitutes the sphere of objective spirit. Freedom is actual, therefore, only in a rational society whose institutions can be felt and known as rational by individuals who are with themselves in those institutions. Hegel's name for a rational system of social institutions is ethical life, Sittlichkeit. Corresponding to objective ethical life, the system of rational institutions is a subjective ethical life, an individual character which disposes the individual to do what the institutions require. The ethical disposition is Hegel's answer to the Kantian separation of duty from inclination, and more generally to the moralistic psychology, which supposes that unless we are moved by impartial reason to follow moral principles adopted from a universalistic standpoint, we will inevitably adopt the utterly selfish policy of maximizing our own interests. On the contrary, Hegel is convinced that the most potent, as well as the most admirable, human dispositions follow neither of these two patterns. A rational society is one where the demands of social life do not frustrate the needs of individuals, where duty fulfills individuality rather than suppressing it. In such a society, rational individuals can promote their self-interest to a satisfactory degree without having to maximize it, and they need not make great sacrifices in order to give priority to right and duty, or to show concern for the good of others. Because our social life is in harmony with our individuality, the duties of ethical life do not limit our freedom, but actualize it. When we become conscious of this, we come to be with ourselves in our ethical duties. Such duties, Hegel insists, do not restrict us, but liberate us. We might put the point by saying that for Hegel, I am free when I identify myself with the institutions of my community, feeling myself to be a part of them, and feeling them to be a part of me. But Hegel would deny that such feelings constitute freedom unless they are certainty based on truth. That is, the institutions of the community must truly harmonize the state's universal or collective interest with the true objective good of individuals, and individuals must be conscious of this harmony. Of course, there is no freedom at all in a society whose members identify themselves with it only because they are victims of illusion, deception, or ideology.